Awesome. So Holly, do you want to just give us an intro? Who are you?
Who am I? So I'm Holly. I'm owner of Bero, I can't even say my last name.
Yep.
Bero Interiors. We are a interior design firm specialized in renovations and home construction in the Pacific Northwest. We also work kind of nationwide now at projects, quite a few out of state. So we really work to build that custom dream home for our client. So mainly doing renovations, home additions. What can we do to help bring a vision to life? I like to say we're the first ones in, last ones out. Create a very comprehensive design plan. Have a very, different kind of approach of how we do design to really understand what our clients' needs are, whether that is bringing their home to something that they're going to live in for the next 30 years. Is it just a 2-year plan? What can we do with their budget and all of that to really make sure that they're getting the most out of their home and really help foresee that whole process through. So
Awesome.
Have my business for 11 years, a team of 5. So office is down here in Puyallup, but like I said, we do a lot on the east side, a little bit everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I'm just gonna ask some questions that I have already prepared, but again, like I said, if you guys have specific questions, please feel free to chime in. So Holly, what are some top renovation trends homeowners should consider when they're thinking about the resale value for their home? So what do you see as like top of the list?
Yeah, trends are hard, don't always, always get that. People are just like, I don't want to be trendy. It's like, well, that's really hard right now. I feel like
The millennial gray was a thing. Now it's like the, yeah.
So glad that's gone. I never loved gray, so I'm happy to see that be out of the picture.
Right.
So to start on that, I think definitely in our area, it's gray enough outside.
Yes.
We're seeing so much more warmth come into spaces. And I think really it's been about texture and depth. People want to feel that texture, depth, and really that feeling of home, which that gray, all white, was lacking. It didn't have that really like that true feeling of home. And so I think there's been a big emphasis on texture. So whether that be natural wood materials, rattans, different types of plasters, Roman clays. People are really trying to bring that, almost that outdoor in feeling, but everyone always wants it durable. Oh my goodness, hear that all the time. So, it's that blend, but I definitely think that people are also trying to get away. We did shakers for a long time. So you see a lot of kind of a new shaker, either skinny shaker or what are some different.
For those that don't know, what's a shaker?
Shaker kind of has that standard kind of cabinet like shaker, like 2-inch kind of around maybe on doors, cabinets, things like that we see that getting brought in. So I think people are being more open to having different profiles. I feel like everyone tried to be so kind of cookie cutter for a while. So we're seeing people be more creative, more adventurous in what they bring into their homes.
How do you balance that with someone's personality, like wanting personal, very unique things to, let's say they tell you like, hey, we want to sell our house in 2 years, and they want to do like something that's like very them.
And paint a mural on the wall.
Well, this could get painted over.
Right. Paint can always
might
change,
break
right?
your heart, but that could be, if someone is really attracted to bold colors and they do, because we always say too, if you're going to put the money in and you're going to be there for a certain amount of time, you want to do something that you love. You want to do something that you feel good about coming home to. Yeah. Most of our clients are planning to live in their home for some amount of significant time, and it's not cheap these days. Right. To do anything, everything's expensive. So if you're going to be doing it, I think a way that we can sometimes push our clients is it's not just about the hard finishes, but how do we layer other things in. So I think art is an amazing thing as an individual to really invest in. Art is fun, it's cool, and you can make a big impact. I think sometimes people overlook that. It's like, how can I really update this space? Well, maybe it is painting it what might feel like a boring color, but then adding something that can kind of speak to you into the space, and you can take it with you. So it's not gonna be offensive, and someone's gonna look at that as like a to-do list that they're gonna have to tackle when they take over.
If someone comes to you with more of like, okay, we really wanna do, let's say, they say, we want the kitchen done, but we also would like flooring, but we also want our bathroom. What is like your pecking order? What would you say is like, number one, you should do this and then do this, and then like, is there?
Well, depends on the budget.
Right.
Budget
I guess really
can
what
help
we're asking
determine
is
that.
like, what's the ROI on what they're doing? Like, if they're doing it and they're categorizing it, okay, we should do this first, or prioritize our budget this way because this one's gonna give us more
Sure.
dollars eventually.
I found that kitchen and bathrooms
Right.
are gonna have your biggest return on investment. Bathrooms are gonna have the biggest price per square foot to renovate.
Mm-hmm.
They are extremely expensive, especially if you're not just like, I mean, even if you're just flipping things out and keeping everything in the same place, but if you're talking about moving anything,
Right.
you're really getting behind the walls, moving that plumbing, you know, that's gonna be your highest price per square foot to renovate in a home is a bathroom. So even though it might have a high return on investment, if you're doing it right or you're doing a major renovation, you're probably not gonna get all of it back.
Right.
I mean, it depends to what level you do it.
And I know from talking from an agent perspective, kitchens and bathrooms are like the number one thing that buyers are like, oh yeah, I like that. So like
Yeah.
they can usually fix
You
the
can-
paint,
yes,
they can fix the other
exactly.
things.
I
It's
mean,
like,
you can
yeah.
make-
See past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make a big impression in those two spaces. I mean, if we're talking about trends too, I mean, might not be something that you're doing, but if you're planning on staying for a while, I mean, really hot right now, we're doing so many is, I think people are really into wellness. Wellness has been really big right now. All of our clients are really saying that that's something that's important to them, is how they can incorporate their wellness habits into how they live every day. So steam showers. We're doing so many steam showers. People love them. You know.
Interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, yeah.
Steam shower.
Yeah, so that's I mean, and it's an investment. That one, you know, you're definitely gonna get the wow factor. Might not get a full return on investment of that, but if it's something that's important to you,
And you're gonna be
you're
using
going to
it
be
for a
getting
while. Yeah.
some of that benefit out of it before you sell. Trust me, it'll look good on that.
What is your take on wallpaper?
I mean, you're asking a designer. I love wallpaper.
I know you like. Maybe I should ask the contractors. What do you guys feel about putting wallpaper in?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's just like anything. There are some that are very subtle that, I mean, there's like a beautiful grass cloth can add so much depth and texture to a space. It's pretty low on the offensive scale that someone might even just again rate it as something that is adding depth or texture to the space. If you pick like a big bold pattern or a chevron stripe or something like that, I mean, that someone's gonna have to love that.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they're gonna see that as, how do I get that off the wall?
Yeah.
So, there are some brands that do some nice stick-on options. We typically go with like the real thing because it's gonna install the best and look the best.
Right, and longevity of it.
Yeah.
So if someone did have, let's say, a smaller budget and they are wanting to just do a few things to like brighten up a space or change a space a little bit without having to do a full remodel.
Yeah.
What, like for, let's just say a kitchen, like what would be like the things you're like backsplash maybe, or counters, or like what would be the most, like the number one thing you would say try first?
Sure. I think some of the easier things that you can do is, I mean, lighting. I think a lot of people overlook lighting. I love lighting. It is a way to make some wow moments.
Yeah.
I mean, there can be expensive lights, but again, in the grand scheme of things, for that impact that you can make, lighting is so often overlooked. So good lighting, layers of lighting. Again, you might not realize why a space feels so good. It's probably because it's lit well, has all the different layers throughout the space. Changing hardware on the cabinets if you aren't completely redoing the cabinets. Updating your hardware is a great way to add something new. A new beautiful faucet, kind of the jewelry of your kitchen, you know, hardware, faucet, lights. Those are the little finishing touches. It just polishes you off. It's like you've got that great outfit and you put those last little pieces on, and they're easy to do. Usually you're not, you know, having to, you know, hire a whole team to come in, you know, the hole is there for the faucet, you're swapping that out, things like that. So I think they're manageable, but they can make a really big impact if you can't do
The whole
full
thing.
deal.
The whole shebang.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, what are most of the common mistakes that you see in home renovations?
Yeah.
And talk to us about how costly some of those things can be to your clients. Or things they've done before they met you, let's just say, or things like
I think people struggle with not creating a cohesive plan. So I think that really knowing what you're trying to accomplish, making a clear goal, will really benefit you in the long run. I think if a home feels disjointed, it's gonna make you feel like it's unfinished when you're there, and someone's going to feel that when they come in, that they don't, you know, you want your rooms to flow. They should feel, they don't all have to be exactly the same, but they should have some continuous threads that run throughout. And so that can, like, again, with lighting, you know, are you updating lighting in the rooms that, again, it feels like there's this cohesion throughout? Updating your door hardware so it looks clean and polished everywhere in the home. It's something that, you know, you're touching and you're interacting with. So I think having a really clear plan, and if you can't do everything, you know, to every home, but are you painting and creating one cohesive palette throughout the home? Again, that just kind of helps neutralize it. But I think having a plan and trying to create that consistency goes really far.
Yep.
I'd also say, I mean, because we'll even have clients that have just bought a home and, but they just put this in, but it looks, you know, it's cheap or it wasn't done well.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to do something and you want it to really pay off, is sometimes it's about scaling back. Instead of trying to do all the things and do them poorly, maybe focus in on a few things and do them right.
Right.
I think that really ends up paying off in the long run.
For sure. I know I have clients, we just closed on a house in Bonnie Lake and they just literally ripped out the countertops. And they're nice, like granite countertops, but they're like, nope, that's gotta go. They repainted the whole, they like flooring, everything, and you could tell that they had just did it, but it was like DIY and did it. And I was like, that wasn't worth your time or money to do that because my clients didn't care. Okay, so I think those are all the questions that I had listed. Does anyone else have any questions for Holly that you want her to answer? Any like tips or tricks or anything that you want to, like, nuggets you want to leave them with?
I think don't overlook the outside either. I mean, I
yes.
think that kind of curb appeal, and again, with that whole cohesion of making it, you know, grabbing someone from the outside. Again, exterior lighting is usually overlooked and way too small. I hate dinky lights. Go bigger than you think. Get a bigger rug. Everyone always has too small of rugs. Bigger lights and bigger rugs. So, I mean, it's gonna make the space feel bigger. If you have, you know, bigger lights, you put all these little tiny pieces in there because maybe they were cheaper, or you know, you felt like it was too bold to go it. I would say go upsize, get it bigger. But yeah, I think outside as well, you know, that curb appeal, don't forget about that.
For sure.
It's your first impression. Like I said, if you're trying to sell, or even just for you greeting your guest, it's kind of that whole entrance sequence in the home.
So I know you talked about trends, but right now, what is your favorite trend that you see in home renovations?
Favorite trend?
And then your not favorite trend.
I just went to a big convention in Vegas, and oh my gosh, there was so many beautiful things. Again, a lot of texture, so, you know, and again, interesting door styles. So reeded, so kind of like, has like this texture to it. Reeded panels are really big. Bringing in other materials. We're seeing a lot of it. Cabinet style doors are becoming so much more interesting. They're just like so flat and shaker for a long time. So love that people are becoming, I think, a little bit more adventurous. So I do enjoy that. Some beautiful metals are kind of right now. And again,
are they like mixing metals now too? That's a thing, or no? Is that not?
Oh yeah, I mean, we've been mixing metals for a long time.
I thought it was
and I think it's funny because people will say,
is copper still like everyone wants it or no?
I mean,
Has it died down a little?
copper's like, I don't know if it was ever like
Yeah.
super.
I feel like it was trendy for a while.
It was a little trendy. I mean, I always have, I was like, oh, I don't want to do brass because I think it's trendy. I'm like, we've been doing gold and brass for like 10 years now. Like, it's no longer trendy. It's just people are doing
It's a
it.
thing. Yeah.
It's like people are doing it. So again, I think it's more if you like it, you should go for it.
As long as that's not hideous.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So hire a designer
Yeah, right.
or someone who's gonna help you, make those educated choices.
Yes.
That are good.
So when you talk about like have a plan, like what essentially does that mean for someone? Just like the aesthetic that they feel once they walk through the door, and then continuing it into
Yes.
each room along the house. There's choking on but room along the house. Like
Yeah,
like,
I
does that
definitely
mean-
think so. I mean, I think that it is about, what are the finishes and materials that you bring in, and then trying to repeat that throughout. So, if you're gonna update something, again, is it the door hardware, and then you're doing it throughout, and then that ties in to some new light fixtures that you do throughout, and it creates something that, again, I think sometimes, a bedroom can just, especially a secondary bedroom, can just be a big blank box, but if it has a beautiful new light and you enter the door with a beautiful new hardware, again, you feel like, okay, this space, it's ready for me to move in. It's feeling good. And are you if you do have some little moments of wow, have them kind of sprinkled throughout, that you're kind of getting those moments consistently throughout the home. And then I think one of the things was, like personalizing it too much. Again, I think there's ways to do it that don't have to be like a hard fixture in the home.
Mhm.
So,
Or decor kind of things versus,
having it be, again, like a teal wall, that might be a little much
Yeah.
for someone. Accent walls, really, I'd say that's, something we don't really do anymore. I mean, probably 10, 15 years ago, like accent walls were like super cool. Hardly ever do. I do love a good wallpaper ceiling. We do wallpaper ceilings a lot.
In bathrooms too.
That's a
powder-
great way.
the powders.
Yeah.
half like wainscoting, half
Yeah,
wallpaper.
wall panelings,
All
different
over.
type of wall panelings, are a fun way to kind of customize or make it feel a little bit more like, again, you customize it, and help define spaces. So another trend that we're seeing too is kind of going away from big open concept.
Yeah.
People are kind of liking to come back to having some more well-defined spaces. So, still liking the kitchen to be centered in the entertainment zone, but having just that you walk in the front door and you can see everything. I think that we've become, I feel like we're just a more anxious society these days. People don't want to walk in the front door and see all their shit everywhere. You want it to.
No, I literally had clients that I was prospecting. She's like, I don't like the open concept. I want.
And I think it
things
can
to
still
like,
be, I think it can be, I've noticed when we talk about with clients is creating a sense of entry and, that smaller space before you walk into the larger space. I think it's something visually about walking in and just being able to see everything can be very overwhelming. And so if your walls are already down and you can't do that, you can do that, with your space planning and how do you arrange your furniture in your home to help it make it feel more intimate. We do a lot where we try to also, there isn't an entry. How do we create a sense of entry within a home that may be a little bit more open? So that can be, gives people good feelings. But definitely getting away from huge big open concepts and having more intimate spaces. So.
Any other questions for Holly? She did my kitchen, I will say that. She designed my whole kitchen, took down walls and everything. I took the walls down because I like it open. And her team is fabulous.
An entry.
There still is an entry. I have a split level, so I still have an entry, but her team is amazing. So thank you, Holly.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your time.
Yes.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Holly.
much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right, Todd. I feel like I need to switch sides. I don't know. Did you? Oh, will you click it?
No, I can do it. You go sit.
All right. All right. So
Yeah.
Todd put some flyers and everything on the
tables.
tables as well, so if you want to see any of that while
Yeah.
we chat, but I don't have a lot of questions for you because I know you have like a lot to tell us. So just a really quick poll, does anyone know what House Bill 1337 is that just passed at the Washington? No? All right. Todd, what is House Bill 1337?
So it's called the ADU bill that passed 2 years ago. So many people are not familiar with it, that if you have a single family residence lot, you can build 2 DADUs. We can condominiumize those and sell them separately or rent them out to anybody you want.
Exactly. So why did you start SkyDADU? Tell us a little bit
Great
about
question.
that. Yeah.
So Sockeye Homes is my company.
Yes.
So I'm a general contractor.
Oh, I should have had you introduce yourself. I'm so sorry. How about you do that first?
Hi, my name is Michelle.
Yes, right?
So I've been building for 30 years now. So Sockeye Homes, we're a team of 43. So we have architects, interior designers in-house, project managers, superintendents. We have our own in-house crews, so I have 6 crews. So we do a lot of just builds. And you know, it's great, the title is equity decision, and for rent, for sale, renovate. I've done all of them. So
All
I
of the
think
above.
this is where I can probably interact with you because you have questions on, I've done subdivisions, you know, I'm talking 40, 50 lots. I've done short plats. I have 14 rental properties that I keep right now. And I think about how to invest and divest. I'm sure you think about all investments, but you also need to think about divestiture of your investments and tax consequences. State of Washington passed the capital gains tax, which is 7%, as you know, in 2025. One of the things that I always make sure that I don't do, and this is something that, you know, we can talk about, I don't let the tax tail wag the dog. You know, it's very important that when you plan something and you know you're looking to buy a piece of property or maybe buy another rental property and flip it. Right? I've done those things early in my career. Some things could work well, and sometimes it doesn't work well. It does come down to financing. I'm sure Taryn knows that. And,
Gotta have money.
Yeah. So, you know, again, I do want this to be interactive in that, but on the topic of why I started SkyDADU as a separate business, DADU is a detached accessory dwelling units. Now, ADU covers both, which is attached to the house and then detached from the house. Since we can condominiumize and sell these DADUs as separate from your main house, meaning that you get to stay in the home, and without subdividing, we can build you a DADU and sell that for profit or rent it out for passive income. So the problem, which kind of, Taryn, you mentioned earlier about HELOC and the rates, and what is your, you know, primary mortgage rate at? 3% or less? No mortgage, good for you.
Yeah, well, you bought in 22,
Yeah.
so yeah.
She's like, no, I'm
Right.
still here.
Yeah, 3%.
Yeah.
I'm
Most
still lower
people,
than it is
you know,
now.
Yeah,
3% or less.
Yeah.
The problem is, so when a lot is, you have your main house, and let's say Bank of America is the primary mortgage that you have with, and then, or maybe something else. Or Taryn.
I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, so let's just say in this case, we'll pick on Bank of America.
Yeah.
Bank of America has the first position on the deed of trust on the entire property with the main house. When we build a DADU, or 2 of them, and you want to condominiumize and sell it, so you go, what do you have to do? Well, Bank of America first have to grant you a partial recombination title, because without the title being reconveyed to allow you to condo map your property, you can't sell those separately. So you gotta go through that process. So loan to value comes into it, sure. But the important part of that is Bank of America is gonna go, yeah, we're happy to lend you construction loans to build those 2 small houses. You think these small houses are easy to build, so you go, yeah. But before we give you that loan or those loans, we're gonna have to refinance your primary mortgage at today's rates. And you say, why would I let go of my 3%, right? Because they have given you the deed, or they placed the first position on the deed on the entire property before you partially convey the title. So it's very important that you understand the mechanics of this before you go, how do I take advantage of this? Well, most people will go through that, and then they realize, and unfortunately, some people will hire an architect or a design build firm, or, and then talk to contractors, get bids, all that. Then they talk to the banker last, only to realize that they don't want to refinance at 7%. And today, in Washington State, jumbo is over 977,000 up. So if the house that you have and the loan that you're borrowing goes over that, which is pretty easily you can get to that point, now you have to go 7.25% or 7.5% because jumbo is higher in interest rates. So these are things that people are not aware of. Coming back to your question.
Yes.
Why did I set SkyDADU as a separate business? I finance the builds for DADUs. So as you see there on my brochure there, finance, build, and manage. And we were talking about that a little earlier. So is it for passive income? Then we do rental management as well.
Are you just financing the house, or while you build, or you actually afterwards will finance too?
Yeah, it's a bridge. So I basically finance up to 6 years or 5.5 years. So basically, I come in as an equity partner, and then I finance.
Those little things out so they can see it. Keep talking. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, before you go to that, you know what,
Okay.
I'll flip to that. Maybe I'll show you what that, I mean, so if you open this, the back side of it, you see 4 programs. So the 4 programs, there's 100% financing, it's called joint venture, and then there's 50% financing, partnership, and then there's hybrid, could be 0 to 50, or no financing needed. So that would be Sakai Direct. So the first 3 require SkyDADU. And Sockeye Homes, I'm a builder, so I can build any of these. The question is, all comes down to financing. So let's say you have a property. Do you have a property in nearby?
Yeah, but we're in an HOA. Our property is smaller.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah, and you're a builder, is what I heard?
Yeah, we're on 5 acres.
5 acres,
Yeah.
yeah. So that would be rural.
Yeah, so we want to build. We're into we actually probably live in the ADU right now. We actually would like to build just like a 2,000 square foot, 2,200 square foot house.
Yeah.
That's
You
the
can use
plan.
my property as an example.
Okay. let's-
Yes, I'm in Lake Taps
Yeah.
on 1/2 acre.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, HOA does supersede the House Bill 1337. So if the HOA says you cannot build a DADU or backyard cottage, then that supersedes the law. That law, by the way, anything new subdivisions, they cannot have that as a stipulation in CCNR.
Existing HOAs.
Yeah. So existing can, but most HOAs are now going through changes in that. So it doesn't have to be a super majority. What I understand is usually the voting rights members can vote and get out to the HOA members. Nonetheless.
Is this more in Seattle right now? It's kind of working its way here.
It's in Tacoma. There's definitely,
Yeah.
they have a showcase actually, they have a built DADU in Tacoma. Yeah.
Are they separate water meters?
Yeah, great question, yes.
Yeah.
Separate sewer, separate water meter, separate, power.
Yeah.
We're not gonna put in gas. Unfortunately, Initiative 2066, which I was one of the we wrote that 2066 to repeal House Bill 1587 that passed last year. But unfortunately, 2 days ago, it was found unconstitutional. So now the gas ban is still going. So unfortunately, we'll see where it goes. But the DADUs that we build are pretty much all electric anyway. Heat pump system, energy code.
What's the square footage?
So you can get up to 1,200.
Is that going up or is that?
It is expanding. So I won't go into details on like House Bill 1110, there's Senate Bill 5559. These are the ones that allow unit lot subdivisions. I don't want to get into all the details in this. The reason why I mention that, if you stick to House Bill 1337, which is the ADU, DADU law, I can build you 2 DADUs on your property, whether it's front and back or both, and she can sell those separate. And the front improvements are not required in 1337, so you don't have to put in the sidewalk and additional costs required for that. All of that to say, you're trying to make these decisions about your equity in land. The thing about it is that your property is the most important asset you have, most people, besides your kids, husband, if they're assets.
They're debts.
They're debts. So I stand corrected. I stand corrected, the real estate is. Yeah. There are many asset classes, stocks, bonds, but as I say in SkyDADU, who is our competition? It really is the stock market. And you look at your stock holdings and you realize, what kind of passive income would you rather have? And when you look at that, you're gonna look at cash on cash return, right? So you look at your rental income and then what is your outlay of cash? And then you're gonna figure out your cash on cash return. If you are gonna sell it, then you're gonna look at return on investment. But over 5.5 years that I do finance, equity finance, here's a question to you, Michelle. In Western Washington, let's say Seattle, Bellevue, every year real estate value goes up, right?
Yeah.
Over 6 years, let's say $1 million house in Renton, what do you think it will go to, maybe? Yeah, praise
In
that.
6 years?
Yeah. From the past history,
From the
historical
past, oh geez,
data.
I mean, the last 6 years have been insane. Our last 6 years have been insane. I would say $1 million, you're probably in 6 years looking at like 1.2, 1.3.
Right, so 20-30% increase just in the value of them,
Yeah.
right? If you have a DADU as a multi-generational living, and then so you didn't sell it, but
Right.
you received income from that, passive income, how much do you think a 2,000 square foot dwelling, DADU, that's 1,000 square foot on the bottom floor would be a garage or storage, and then you can have 1,000 square foot up above. How much do you think that'll rent for in Renton?
Oh gosh. I mean, you're looking at minimum like probably 28 to 3,000.
Okay. In Renton, they rent for close to 4,500.
What?
Yeah.
I was thinking just the upstairs.
So-
I'm not thinking the garage.
I think you were asking that question.
Yeah.
Is that wave coming to the south end? And
Yeah.
where did it start and where is it going?
Yeah.
Seattle, Bellevue, they went
Much
they went
higher,
north,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
Snohomish County. I don't know the last time you've been up to Snohomish County and seen, like, driving to Bellingham. I mean, it's like developed, right? What
Way
used to
different
be
than it
just
was.
like acres
Yeah.
of nothing is now just, they've gone so much to the north. But there is what's called a border, so you can't really go beyond that, right? But so that wave is coming down to the south end, especially the pandemic and COVID really kind of expand that footprint to go, well, we need to go to the south end, there's more land. So that whole crowd of Seattle, Bellevue have really come down to Renton Kent, Auburn, Burien, Normandy Park, Federal Way, you name it, all in the south end.
How many places do you go that people want to do this and then realize they don't have, I mean, what, if they want to, I'd like to build another, on the backside of my house, and then realize, you go into it and you said, you know, you can't do it here because of no parking, something like that. How often does that happen?
Great question. If you have a major transit, like a bus stop, within a half a mile, you're not required to have a parking for the DADU. If your property is over 6,000 square feet, typically is, but if you don't have a major bus stop, then you would have one. If it's less than 6,000, it's one. I think more than 6,000, maybe two or something like that. But it's not, crazy. Basically, they took out the parking restrictions quite a bit in this House Bill 1337, so made it
Well, and
easier.
if you can do the garage on the bottom floor, then that's the part.
But you have to have a
You
place to get to it.
You have to have access to it, right?
Well, we
Yeah.
do put in driveways.
Right.
Usually we split from the driveway, main driveway, to get around. So accessibility is crucial.
Yeah.
Now, if your house only has like grandfathered in 2 feet on one side and 3 feet on the other, and then there's no alleyway, then unfortunately you are.
Landlocked, yeah, you're not
I was gonna say SOL, but.
Yeah. And I mean, I think for at least the information that I've gathered from you, really the properties that have, like the dilapidated garages with alley access, like that's the prime for this in the beginning. That doesn't mean that properties that don't have alley access aren't,
Could
Yeah.
you still
candidates.
build that, so like somebody wants to have their mother-in-law or family member move in the back, but you don't have that, if they don't care about the driveway and things like that, have you still done that way before?
You can. I have not done that here in Washington State, but they do, I think in California and different places, if that is strictly the case, you might, but you would want to have a truck access, so.
to get the
Yeah.
materials back there, yeah, I think.
Feet's enough.
Just squeeze it on, 4x4 that thing in there.
Interesting.
He's out there with the utility trailers.
Go through the front door,
Yeah.
back door.
I've built overseas at the beginning of my career 30 years ago, in places that we had to actually lift machines over the
Stop.
house.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
so we've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
Crane in the machine.
Yeah, crane in the machine. Yeah, so
It's crazy.
yeah, there are things that you kind of have to,
It's like weird places in Utah like that, or like you can't get any, like it's on the side of the mountain, and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna crane in this bobcat so we can build your house, I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit, I know there's packages in there with the actual like floor plan, so explain a little bit about
Yep.
maybe the, decision behind why you have those different packages, and then what that means with like the pricing and stuff, cause I know
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, and yes, so why do we have the fixed price packages? Because when I am your equity partner, we need to make sure what the split for the rent is for passive income until you buy back my share, which you have, like I said, 5.5 to 6 years to do so. Or when we decide to sell it, we need to make sure that net profit is shared 50-50. So I make sure that my team, the great thing is we are a design build, so we're a one-stop shop when it comes to this. So we do all the feasibility, and a lot of people don't realize that civil engineering can be needed, or maybe needed for drainage reviews and impervious surfaces, and all these things come in for a little tiny house. We go through all that to determine what that ultimate cost is, but to begin with, the biggest portion is the house itself. So we have the fixed price packages that we put together, and then we go, okay, what are our other costs? You mentioned about sewer and water, right? If it's kind of in the back, and then if it's more than 150 feet or 200 feet from the fire hydrant, which doesn't meet the requirement of 1,750 gallons per minute, then you have to yada yada. There's a lot of code to that. So my architects and project managers, always dig into all the code when it comes to that, so we know how much those things are. It's crucial, as Michelle said, to fix the price, the cost, so that when we go into a contract for a partnership, we know exactly what we are faced.
So the fixed price is just the cost for the build, it's not below ground.
That's right, so this is mud sill up, and
Yep.
then, so the foundation could vary, depends on your topography of the property, and also utilities cost. Sometimes we have to, like Seattle, likes to make us, in the right-of-way permit, have to get through the city street cutting, which you hire like 58 flaggers, I don't know what they do, but they do this. One does the work and, 57 just,
Stand there.
Somebody's gotta hold the shovel.
My husband works for the city of Seattle, so I'm very aware.
Yeah.
It's a lot of ground, guys.
yeah,
Just put it that way.
I won't go into those details, but you get the picture, right? Yeah, so sewer, water, it could be, sewer. So if you have a 4-inch connection to main sewer and you go over 100 some feet, then we'll probably have to connect directly to the sewer to the street, and that sewer connection has to be like a 6-inch connection. You know how much that costs in Seattle? At least 48, 50 grand. So, and water, because we put in, we can't put in the hammerhead because there's no wide driveway for the fire engines to come in and pull out. So what do? We have to put a sprinkler system. When we put the sprinkler system, you have to have an inch and a half combo meter for the volume of water. So an inch and a half combo meter, a Sioux Creek water system, runs about $48,000. So these are the things that I'm actually battling with the utilities from the Building Industry Association of Washington standpoint to go, now these laws are great, but how can we reduce the cost in that? There are jurisdictions like Bero, which is a very friendly place, and Kevin is the mayor there, and so he's got his sewer side with states grant money and so forth to provide better connections to some of the property owners, and they're getting these 6-inch connections for free, so making it easier to build. I think that should kind of permeate throughout the state. There are good money to recover in the levies and different ways to capture that. So I think there are jurisdictions that are very friendly, to your point, and Tacoma.
What about septic? If someone's on septic, 'cause that happens a lot down
So
here.
I'm sure you have a septic system, 5 acres, yeah,
Yeah.
so we have to have a separate septic system. We built, I've built probably 30, 40, maybe more now, 50 DADUs just in those areas. And a lot of acreage property owners would come to us, we design, and we just have to have a separate septic system for the DADU, but 5 acres, you're gonna most likely have that unless you have a bunch of
I'm in
wetlands.
Stanley.
Yeah.
I do have like, what's the word, but I'm not worried about my property.
Yeah, and water, again, it's, the good thing is if you have if you have a 5 acre or more, you can have your individual well, I'm sure you do. That could be used for the second, DADU, so that, code has been updated, which makes it easier to just, free water, so that's great.
Until you're replacing a pump.
And then so you said, obviously you guys do from start to finish, so talk a little about the finish side of it, so the condoizing, so just so people understand what that means and why.
Is it condoizing or condominiumizing? I don't know. Condominiumizing, it's a tough word to say.
Yeah, it's fine. You guys know what we mean.
Yeah, condoizing, yes, sorry. So the finish,
Yes.
towards the end, what do we
Yes.
do? So condominiumization process takes about 9 months. Okay, so when we get into the build, you don't have to condoize your property. We will still, when we draw the site plan, we'll do the condo map so that we provision for how you want it. And typically we do it for 2 DADUs, whether you want to or not, so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot by
Later,
building something right in the middle. So we kind of go through the condo mapping and get that recorded. By doing that, you don't have to condominiumize, but the difference is this. With the state law, 1337, what it stopped doing, so every jurisdiction had, hodgepodge policies until, 1337. And, you know, you and I were just talking about earlier, so many jurisdictions have hodgepodge policies where the state law just governs everything. What it did is it took out the owner occupancy requirement, which means used to be you had to rent it out to family members, and people would be creative, you know, get very creative. Second cousin once removed. I don't know how those things work, but that's what they were saying. But now you can. If you don't condo minimize your property, so let's say we build you, you know, a DADU, and then you didn't think about this legal side, which we provide all the legal stuff. If you don't go through it, so that would be Sakai Direct. The hybrid, 0% financing, but people come to us to make sure we condo minimize. Why they want to do that is, think about it. If you rent it out to non-family members, and I'm sure you can tell us this, yeah, which is, what happens if you get squatters, right? Well, what happens if you get squatters on your own property and your DADU that you did not put that into an LLC, limited liability corporation, and then set up an HOA, homeowners association, between the main house and the DADU, which we do all of that. Why that's important to condominiumize to do that? Because if those squatters decide not to pay, and then you try to evict, and some procedure goes wrong, they've been living on your property. So what do? They can sue you for part of your main house. Very possible scenario, right? So I'm sure you can tell us this, you know, all my 14 rental properties each one is an LLC.
Yes.
So I have a holding company to, you know, basically for accounting reasons, and that's how you want to protect yourself. You do that when you have a rental property away from your house, home, right? Property.
Right.
But now you're gonna have a property that's rentable on your own property. So it's the same thing. We have to put that into an LLC. We have to set up the HOA properly, which my legal team does all that. So it's very important, thank you for that question, to do that. And therefore, people who don't know, go into this, just build it and rent it. Well, it's gonna be for my parents. Okay, maybe for the next 5 years it may be, maybe 10 years. But don't you wanna protect yourself in case your parents have to move into a home? And then now it's sitting there and you go, wow, it's sitting there empty, so might as well just rent it out. It's the first thing you think about. But at that time, you're not gonna take 9 months or a year to condominiumize. And you go, well, I just wanna rent this right away. That's when people get in trouble. So it's highly recommended that if you don't need financing from me, you still use SkyDADU. We'll do the build, but we'll do the legal side to set it all up. So that will be the hybrid case to make sure to protect your property and your interest.
So if they condoize it, but you can have it condoized, but you don't have to be like paying into an HOA or anything. Like, let's say you do have mom living there, and then once you decide mom moves out and you want to rent it, then you start what?
I'm just thinking about financing, cause like getting an HOA approved with Freddie and Fannie is like insane, so I'm like, which I know actually in Spanaway, there was a bunch of these like condo associations that dissolved, that are now just homes people buy. But like, say I go do this and I put 2 houses on my land, and then how do I dissolve when I sell it? Like what financing are they getting on the opposite side that says, you know what I mean? I'm not part of an HOA, or like, we've got no reserve studies, we have no funds, we have like, what happens?
So, 2 different questions.
Yeah.
But to answer your question,
Yeah.
Because, so it is a condo.
Yeah.
You're right.
Essentially,
So,
yeah.
essentially. So it is, you come with a mortgage to buy that, you know.
Correct,
DADU.
right. Yes.
And there are, you know, lenders, I'm sure you do too. You can write, you know, you can underwrite, you know, you can provide mortgages.
Yeah.
And there are many, many companies and banks now that do that, whether it's a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, or you can, you know, adhere to those conforming loans. But the cost is gonna be conforming, so it's a condo unit, is how they look at it. It has its own legal description.
Okay.
It has its own tax parcel. So yeah, it is a separate thing. The HOA
Yeah.
sets up so that we set the common area for use. So let's say your property is half acre. That's big enough, and half acre you can put two, you know, we can create, you know,
That's
ditch trees
yeah,
and all
yeah.
that. I mean, it'll be very private, right? And by doing that, there will be some areas, so the condoized unit B and C
Mm-hmm.
will have an HOA that we set up to go, here's the common area. So on the condo map, it shows the common area, whether it's for parking or for their kids
Walkway
to
or
play
something,
on, the
yeah.
backyard and so forth. So while the condo unit B and C does not own the entire, you know, property, the HOA allows them to use it. On the same token, you don't want the future buyers or whatever to put, you know, a bunch of crap in the backyard and ruining the value of the property.
Right.
So there's a, you know, CCNRs per se to do that. Now, this isn't the case of I think you're talking about, to answer your question on this, the condos of like high rises and multi-level
Yeah.
condos, they are problematic because
Yeah, I know.
of HOA. I think that's what you're talking about. These
Yeah.
are looked at
Because
as
they're single-family
single-family
residents.
residents.
Okay.
So it's more like the townhouses that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's easier to almost, you know, underwriters will look at that and go, oh, thank goodness, HOA and CCRs are governing right.
Yeah.
But this is not a situation where stock was gonna fail or
Yeah.
unit 402 had a, you know,
Piper.
Pipe burst
yeah,
and
and
it's-
then
yeah.
everybody else
Yeah.
has to pay. That is not the case, so
Okay.
you can look at it as SFR.
Okay, so probably the reserve studies and things that they would need
Wouldn't
to
be,
underwrite that
yeah.
wouldn't be necessary in those cases.
I would say so.
Okay.
Just get on the HOA board.
Sometimes that makes it worse. I've had those clients on the HOA board, okay?
That makes it easier for your house though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're owning it, that's different.
But
Yeah.
that's a great question, and also.
Just because, I mean, I know that like, you know, obviously this area and these areas in general, we are at a housing deficit. We have been for a long time. We don't have a lot. Building is expensive
Yeah.
and timely, and they're not building near quite fast enough. So it's like having that as an option, like then, okay, great, we wanna do this, we wanna sell the two, how do we finance them after,
Right.
when we're selling?
Because they
you
need
know
to
what I
be
mean?
marketable
They need to
too,
be
because
marketable,
also
yeah.
the whole point of House Bill 237 is to help with the housing crisis,
Right.
like
Yeah.
to get more affordability for people to then get into homes, but they need to make sure they can finance
Yeah.
it to get into homes. Because
Right.
people that are buying these are not cash buyers, they're
Right.
people that
They're
need
people that need
financing, so-
financing, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
question.
And so that is a huge benefit
Yeah.
because 98% of the buyers, you know, for these are gonna come, you know, they need financing, they
Right.
need mortgages.
Right.
So, you know, they need to talk to you,
Yeah.
and then you can provide that mortgage so that they can buy that. What, on the financing side of what I'm talking about
Yeah.
is to build it.
Build it, yeah,
And then
yeah.
have property owners able to keep it or want to sell it, but buy back my share
Yeah.
within 5.5 years. Why I say 5.5 years to get into technicality of how I structured this is the last 6 months nobody's gonna drag me into a 6-year term. That's what I don't want, because we're gonna have to sell it together, or we're gonna split the profit 6 years later, which is fine if you string me along that long to do that. But if you don't, if you wanna buy that after 5.5 years and you couldn't come up with the financing to, you know, buy me out, then I let my partner, so let's say you wanna do this with me, I let you encumber the DADU, so you can get a HELOC on the DADU at closing when I quit claim deed to you on
Yeah.
the title. That's when you can encumber, so you would just basically at closing, you would just bring
Yeah.
Midwestern Bank and then just pay me.
Whatever, pay you out of it, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
But I don't let anybody encumber the DADU during the, you know, course of 5.5 years.
Right. Or get, cause you
Yeah, because it would be a LTV
Yeah.
problem, yeah, so, because it's a partially reconveyed. So we make sure there are rules and regulations to that. But what it does is allows people who just don't have enough cash to build and also don't want to refinance your low rate mortgage on the
Yeah.
main house.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely necessary on our end to build, but your end, you can come in to provide the mortgages, which is a great part of being able to do that.
And I think a lot of majority of people are multi-generational living right now, so
It's a very big trend
Yeah.
happening, so.
I feel like it's uncommon. in
Any
this
other questions for Todd? Any other tidbits or knowledge you want to share with them?
Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll have time after.
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's
Okay.
pass the baton.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Todd. Miranda. Yeah. You guys want more food or drinks? Feel free to shake your legs for a minute. I won't forget to let you introduce yourself. Sorry, Todd.
You just assumed everybody knew who you
Oh
were.
my God,
Okay?
let's just go.
Michelle, you
Yeah, right? Give everyone a minute to grab a beverage or two. Yeah, Todd, seriously though, I do need a billboard in my backyard. My mom and I were talking about that today.
Yeah.
She's like, you should just extend your wall, because my my primary bedroom is so small, and she's like, you should just, I'm like, no, I should just build something in my backyard for you.
But Michelle, you didn't introduce your CSB. Can you explain?
Oh yes, I am a certified SkyDADU broker, so I work with Todd and his team. So I help their team basically find homeowners that have properties, and I help them basically do the pre-qualification process to see if their properties would make sense to build DADUs on them, and then bring Todd's team with me to those walkthroughs and things like that. So I'm kind of there from that start, as well to if they do end up condoizing and selling it, that I would represent them to sell that portion of their property. So I work closely with Todd and their team, and it's a great partnership, and actually emailed Hyan about a property out in Seattle for next week, so yeah. Awesome. All right, so Miranda, you wanna go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Miranda. I am the designated broker at MLR Property Management Services. I have been a landlord and in property management for about a decade now. I started my own firm just recently, so January 1st was my official, I'm taking on rent collection. But I pulled away from the bigger property management companies because I wanted to bring personalization back into it. I wanted to have the professional property management that you need, but to allow that personalized approach back into it, so that when the tenant calls you, they know that who they're gonna get to talk to. They know that you're gonna follow through with what you say you're going to do, because at the end of the day, I'm the one picking up the phone. So, very excited to have my firm up and running, so.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna just dive into some landlord basics. So how do you determine the right rental price for a property?
It's very similar as if you're going to sell your home. You need to do a comparable market analysis. So you're going to look at recent rentals that have rented in the last, I don't know, probably 6 months. It's probably a little bit longer than just looking to sell.
Right.
But you look at the last 6 months, you look at the closest area you can get, and then you take age and condition into factors, just like you would if you're selling a home. And then you also want to look and see how long were those on the market for as well. If they sat on the market for 30 days or whatever, they probably were priced a little bit too high. If they flew off the thing as well, probably a little bit low. So once you see what ones have rented for, then you want to kind of go in and see what's your competition in the market now as well.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is trust Zillow.
My Zillow estimate,
I know,
that's
I get-
the same way on the sale and on the rental, I'll
Yeah.
tell you that.
I get people who call me, I was like, well, do you know kind of what you need for rental? And they're like, well, Zillow. I was like, oh, okay.
Gotta love those conversations.
I was like, we're going to pull some hard data,
Yeah.
and then we're going to take a look
Okay,
at
so
that.
question about that, because I am always curious about that, because as a real estate agent, obviously I can see the MLS, but not all rentals are listed on the MLS. So
No.
how do you get that data of what rents?
There's websites available.
Yeah.
Rentometer is a great resource to be able to go online.
Appraisers use Rentometer.
Yeah, Rentometer, it's been pretty reliable for me. There's Zillow Rental Manager too,
Okay.
so you can see what's been rented there. And just taking all of those resources and
Right.
pulling them together for really
Not
accurate
just
data.
doing one
Yeah.
thing. Yes, no, that definitely makes sense. So how does that process work then? Working with, let's say, someone versus trying to do it themselves, versus using a property manager. So when you come in, how does that, just kind of walk us through, like, how does that process work when?
From pricing your rental?
Or just like the inquiry comes in, they
Oh,
say
okay.
they wanna, use you as a, what does that look
Yeah.
like versus, like, what services do you
I-
provide versus them doing it
I
themselves?
always talk to them about what their goals are first.
Okay.
I think it's very important to determine what somebody's goals are. Or is this going to be, is this somebody who's moving out of state, they wanna come back to it in 2 years? Or is it somebody who just can't sell because they just purchased a home and they're moving and they just need to not be upside down in their mortgage? Or is this going to be a long-term rental for them?
Right.
So I talked to them about their goals. We kind of set a strategic plan. I want to make sure I'm a good fit for them just as much as are they going to be a good fit for me.
Right.
Once we kind of determine that, I talked to them about finances. Are you, is this something that you're prepared for? What is your mortgage? What is your fees? What are my fees going to be added into that? Are we accounting for maintenance costs? What do you kind of need to get from it? And does that align with what market rent is? Because you can't base it off of what you need. I get that a lot of times. They're like, well, my mortgage is this, my fees are this, and I want to make this amount of money. I was like, well,
If it's not gonna rent,
if
it's
it's
not
not
gonna
gonna
rent.
rent,
Yeah.
it's not gonna rent.
Yeah.
So, just kind of educating them, especially if they're a first-time landlord, there's going to be a lot of questions. What I typically do is I say, hey, I have a lot of information. I'm gonna send you out some stuff. Like, I'm gonna send you out my management agreement. I have an owner's manual, which walks through every step of every process. It's the leasing process, it's the maintenance process. So if you're not familiar with being a landlord, reading through this, reading through my frequently asked questions, it's going to give you time to kind of get familiar with the
Okay.
process,
Yeah.
and then we're going to have another phone call after that.
Okay.
We can kind of touch base on, what are your concerns?
Yeah.
So, if everything goes well and everything, then I do an intake inspection. I walk through the property with them, I kind of look at stuff, probably very similar to when you're going to sell your home. I'm going to go, okay, if we want to get X amount for rent, these are a few strategic updates we're going to need to make. We're going to need to paint, maybe we update some of the hardware a little bit.
What's the rule
fixtures.
again on carpet?
I would say 5 to
5
7 years.
5 to 7.
that was
For
fun.
rentals,
Oh.
for rentals.
For rentals,
'Cause you
yes.
had, I thought it was like I thought it was at least 7, but yeah, 5 maybe, but yeah.
It depends
Yeah.
on the grade of carpet
Okay,
too.
yeah.
Like if we're doing basic carpet, which a lot of people do, if it's already a rental,
Right.
or whatever, it's basic carpet. I'm saying 5 years on that
Yeah.
before you kind of want to replace
Refresh.
that. and
Okay,
refresh that.
yeah. And then are you going through the maintenance things as well, like asking them like when the furnace was last serviced and like all of that kind of stuff?
So I actually, once you hire me, I do a quick intake inspection. Once you hire me, I actually send a home inspector out to your property, walk through the whole thing. We look, because I'm not going to move somebody in and then next thing you know, oh man, the hot water heater just flooded, or
Right.
this or that. So I want you to be aware of potential upcoming repair costs, as well as things that maybe we need to take care of now before we move a tenant in.
Right, no, that makes sense. So talking about what you just said with people's need for their, mortgages this a month and, what is your general rule of thumb that you tell people if they're not going to cash flow? Like, would you tell people like, I just wouldn't recommend you renting it?
No, absolutely
Like, is there like,
not,
you
no.
have to at least make like,
No.
I would say $200 to $300 a month to make it make sense? Like, no? Okay.
No, I was what you would call an accidental landlord when I first became an investor. This is where, okay, I'll tell you my story.
Yeah, I love it.
So I was married, military. He got out of the military. We're like, woohoo, we're gonna
Yeah.
finally be able to settle. Bought a home. He was working for the railroad. Bought a home, and 3 weeks after we purchased this home, he is gonna be furloughed. And it's like, okay, well, how long is this furlough thing gonna last? And there's like, oh, they're estimating 3 to 6 months. I was like, okay, we'll take the travel trailer, go up there, and we'll stay here until you come. We're approaching a year. I was like, listen, I'm not ready for another deployment. It's like, we're gonna move, we're gonna be together, because it wasn't looking like he was gonna be able to come back anytime soon. So it's like, what do you do? I had never even thought of renting my property before.
Right.
It's just like, you sell, right? Well, looking at the numbers, I was like, oh no. I was like, we cannot sell right now. We would be losing so much money. So I became an accidental landlord, and I took a hit. on my, on what we got for probably 2 years before I started cash flowing.
Mm-hmm.
This is Southern Oregon, Klamath
Okay.
Falls, so it took a minute to build up there. But after that, I started cash flowing. The equity, and this is, you know, part of this, the equity build though that I got, we ultimately sold like 8 years later and made like a 30-40% profit off of it. It was,
Nice.
they did some development down in Klamath Falls. So hands down, do not let a negative cash flow deter you from renting out your home. Especially if it is something like that, like an accidental landlord, or you're
Or I
wanting
mean,
to
just
move
at the end of the day, it's a pro con, right? Like,
Yeah.
what does the selling look like versus the rental,
back.
right?
Exactly.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see first-time landlords make, and how can they avoid them?
Well, I see a lot of mistakes from seasoned landlords as much as
Okay, any landlord,
yeah.
it doesn't need to be first-time.
Probably the biggest mistake is screening. But your tenant that you put in that home is going to make or break your investment. So it's worth the time to slow down, really screen them properly, make sure that you've touched all your bases, and with as much confidence as you can, then move them forward after that.
So take us a little bit through your screening process, and how does that work when you have a tenant apply? Like, what are we doing? A background, like what?
Oh man, I
everything?
become like a little PI investigator. Like this is fun. It's fun for me. I actually really enjoy it. But this is going to be a long answer.
That's fine. Go for it.
So the first thing I do is I look at the income documents. General rule of thumb is 3 times the monthly rent is what you're hoping for. There's different cities now that can kind of cap you. Tacoma, fair market value determines if it's 2.5 or 3 times the monthly rent.
So when you say income, is that you're looking at W-2s or past pay stubs?
It's going to depend on
what time of year.
What type of if they're employed, I'm typically looking at pay stubs. I want 2 months of worth of pay stubs. If they are self-employed, I want P&Ls, I want tax documents, I want sometimes I take bank statements. I was like, give me 6 months worth of bank statements. I want to see consistent deposits in here. And then I'm going to take the average of those to kind of determine what your income is. When you are looking at income documents, this is a big area for fraud with tenants. I've had tenants literally submit, because they didn't even pay for the fake pay stubs. They just still had the little watermark on there. So pay attention. Things like year-to-date income, is that matching up, from one to another? Just be vigilant, look at it, really look at this. Don't just look at the gross income, read through the whole document. It's a huge area for fraud, and something where it's you kind of need to know what you're doing and you have to have lived the experience a few times to kind of know what to look for.
Oh yeah, I had PTSD for my first tenant, so it's fine.
Yeah. So that's just the income.
Yeah.
Then you want to get the screening report back. You're going to look at kind of credit score. I don't accept credit scores under 625. There is an exception if they don't have a credit score at all, typically new renters and stuff like that. I wouldn't just deny them, I would maybe ask for a guarantor if that was the case. And I have a whole other criteria for guarantors. So credit score, under 625, automatic denial, I don't really have wiggle room there. Then you look for criminal history on that. You cannot give a blanket statement of no criminal history. Always put in your criteria on a case-by-case basis. Things such as registered sex offender or just sex offenders, things like that, you can automatically deny, but you don't just put that out in your rental criteria. Be very careful. And then eviction history. Any evictions more than 7 years old don't really show up, but obviously you don't want that. Also look through their debt. If they owe a past landlord money, that is an automatic denial for me. If you're gonna leave debt out there for another landlord, you're gonna do it for me too, so no thank you.
No thank you.
So that's the screening, and then you do the rental history verification part of this. This is another big area for fraud. People are like, oh, I'm gonna put my best friend down and put their phone number, and they're not gonna know. How are they gonna know? First step I do is look at the addresses. is the address on their ID, does that match the address that is on their application? Does that address match what is on their pay stubs or their bank statements or the other information that they provided to you? Once you verify, like maybe that's consistent, the screening report also should give you their current address along with previous addresses as well. If you are using a screening method that is not giving that to you, I highly suggest switching to something that will provide all of that information, because that's key. Like, you're not gonna lie to me, I'm gonna see it right here.
Right.
After you verify the address is correct, now you wanna make sure that the person that they listed is actually the landlord. So the county assessor website is a great resource. If it's under an LLC, which it should be, you can go look up that business entity and kind of find out that way.
Okay.
If it's a property management company, of course, quickly Google that property management company. Is that phone number the correct phone number? So a little bit of a PI investigation when it comes to screening your tenants. But when you do verify all that and you are sending out the verification, things you are looking for are how many times did they pay rent late, in the last 12 months? If it's over 2 times, you probably want to be cautious of that. Non-sufficient fund returns, those are something you want to kind of keep an eye out for. Lease violations, like noise complaints, pet issues, stuff of that nature. Do they currently owe us a balance still? Do they owe, what were the repairs like when they moved out? So things of that nature kind of give you a better idea of the character of the tenant that you're moving in, as opposed to just, can they pay? So will they pay?
Right.
Because they might be paying rent, but they might be miserable.
So walk us through a little bit about with Washington laws, because I know those are fun for landlord-tenant laws. And a lot of times, landlords feel like they're getting the short end of the stick, especially when they're smaller landlords. I know, I'm just trying to see, okay? So how can landlords protect themselves legally while maintaining good tenant relationships? So how, obviously lease agreements are very important.
Yes.
Do you do inspections like every 6 months, or how often are you doing those? Anything that you would recommend?
I would say minimum do an annual inspection.
Okay.
I have a home inspector I use. He's a general contractor and he's also an investor. So he knows exactly what I want him to look for when he goes in there. He's going to make sure attic, crawl space, everything is working properly.
Right.
He's going to be able to notice damage, water damage or something like that, that maybe even I wouldn't be able to pick up on.
Right.
But he's also looking for lease violations, unauthorized tenants, unauthorized pets. And that's going to, you need to have eyes on your property.
Right.
In order to be able to see what's going on. Obviously, lease agreements are very important too. Do not just Google a lease agreement.
Take one off the internet.
I had this was back in my previous life, bigger property management company. I had a 60-unit apartment complex. We brought in those leases. The guy had been managing them and writing leases on napkins. Don't do that. It was such a mess. He was very old school. He's like, it's okay, I know Joe, we shook hands. I was like, don't.
Oh, Lord.
Joe won't know you when he doesn't want to pay his rent.
Right, exactly.
But your lease agreements, they need to be up to date with the current laws.
Right.
They also need to be property specific and tenant specific. So addendums are a great way to be able to kind of incorporate that flexibility between lease agreements. Like, do they have a pet? Do they have an ESA? You're going to want an ESA addendum or a pet addendum.
What's an ESA addendum?
An ESA is an emotional support animal. So there's, the verbiage that's going to come in that is going to be very different than the verbiage that is in a pet addendum.
Got it. Okay. So anything else you would recommend for just landlords? I know the squatter thing we were talking about, which, I know a lot of things are hard to, but I know screening is one of them, but anything else that you, there's things you can do to help kind of, if you do get a squatter, if you had done a few things ahead of time, might be able to help. There's tricks with people posting no trespassing signs, taking a picture of them beforehand. We're talking squatters that break in and enter. Right.
I was talking last week to a seasoned landlord. She's been managing her triplex for 3 years. She got busy and didn't screen as well as she normally would and moved in what we call a professional squatter. It's somebody who knows what to do
Yeah.
to get in there,
They
and
probably
once
want
they're
cash
in there,
for keys.
yeah, they
Yep.
start, they ride that wave as long as they can, without paying rent, and when it starts to come down to it, then they're gonna demand cash for keys.
Yeah.
And then they move on to the next one. So, easiest way to do that is hire a property management
Yeah,
company,
exactly.
but if not,
Yeah.
solid lease agreements.
So
doing
explain a little bit
inspections.
more about when you do hire a property management company. You guys take care of like the emergency calls, correct? All of that, maintenance, things like that. You're coordinating, or how does that typically work with
Yeah.
the property?
Well, with it depends on the property management company you hire. Some companies have in-house maintenance that are doing that.
Right.
I vendor things out to
Right.
trusted vendors that I know. So yes, I take those emergency calls at
Right.
like
It's
3
not
a.m.
yeah, correct. That's
Yeah.
why people hire you, so that
Yeah.
way they're not the ones getting that
Exactly.
phone call at 3 a.m. when the water heaters.
Yeah.
So what are the best property management strategies for maximizing income and minimizing vacancies? Any strategies for lease terms or anything? or-
Know your market rate
Okay.
is very important for maximizing, right? If you overshoot it, you're going to lose money on vacancy. If you undershoot it, obviously that's hurting your bottom dollar. So knowing your right market rate is crucial. Marketing it professionally,
Right.
go shoot for professional photos. So many times I see people just, quick iPhone, like a good professional photo is gonna show well. Respond very quickly to those inquiries.
Right.
That's communication is going to be key when it comes to that. If you get an interested person, make sure you're as quickly as you can responding to them, scheduling
Yeah.
that showing, and following
And
through with
isn't-
that.
correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong with this, I don't know all the new laws with Washington, but if you get a qualified applicant,
Mhm.
don't you, and they pass everything, aren't you required to give it to, you can't just wait for others?
No, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair housing. Yes.
Right, that's all,
Yeah.
you have to give it to them, you can't be like, oh, I wanna see a few more, I
No,
wanna
no,
see a
no,
few
no,
more
no, no.
applications,
Yeah.
I had this, well,
Yeah.
we don't
I
wanna do
mean,
that.
if there are some ways around fair housing, like if you have like a fourplex and you own or occupy one, you can actually be a little bit
Pickier.
pickier
Because you're
on
sharing
that.
the
okay.
wall.
Or if you have one single family home, you can do that.
Okay.
You can be a little bit, if you're managing it on your own. If you hire a professional property manager, I'm sorry, you were
It's
abiding
whoever
by
it
fair
is.
housing laws.
Right.
And it is who it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other mistakes that you see or in ways that people can avoid them when being a landlord?
Expect for those expenses just in case.
Yeah.
It's very much like having an emergency fund on hand. You do not want it to be where if your renter did not pay on the first, that you cannot make your mortgage payment that month.
Right.
It should not be that tight. In the beginning, sometimes I understand it can be until you start building up a little bit of that nest egg, but shoot for at least 3 months worth of kind of income just for the unexpected to happen, the unexpected maintenance repair, or the unexpected, your tenant got laid off and now he's trying to find another job. So
Right.
expect those unexpected expenses to come up and plan for them accordingly.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone have any?
Short-term rentals.
Yeah.
I
really?
don't manage
You're ready.
short-term rentals, so I'm not an expert in that field, I'm sorry.
That or Airbnbs, right?
Yeah. I just do long-term residential.
Oh, sorry.
no.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Is it harder to rent out townhomes than single family homes?
Not necessarily. There's somebody looking for every different type
Okay.
of thing.
Okay.
There's people looking for little DADUs. There's people who are okay with a townhome. There's some people specifically want a home with a fenced backyard and stuff. So it's knowing your client and who it is.
Yeah, because we had 2 in our neighborhood, like literally on our street. We're in like townhomes in Tahale, and they took forever to rent, and that's kind of what's been holding us back too, just to kind of.
Probably the price, I would almost
Yeah,
guarantee,
yeah.
they were too high.
They were too high.
Yeah.
Especially
We
in
did
If you're
Right.
trying to price a townhome the same as you would a single family
it's
not
home,
the same.
that's
Okay,
your
that makes
issue
sense.
right
Yeah.
now.
It
Yeah.
tracks with the person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, we're kind of like at that low percent rate where
Yeah.
it would most likely be our mortgage payment. So it's like
Yeah.
we
Right.
said, where we're not expecting to make anything out of it yet. But
Yeah,
like,
right,
we
yeah,
also don't
it
wanna let
comes.
it go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I mean, just as your home value is increasing, market rent is also increasing.
Okay.
it is.
Like in Seattle, it was 2% increase just last year, so it's
Okay.
like, it's increasing year over year, just like your home value is increasing. So
Exactly.
you might be at a 0 cash flow this year, doesn't mean you're not gonna be,
Yeah.
you're gonna be
Exactly.
positive.
Yeah, and having that discussion, redoing a market analysis at renewal time,
Every year.
every year,
Yeah.
look at that data. Also
Having
take it-
that built into your lease, so that way
Yes.
you can increase
Yeah.
if they are
Mhm.
staying, that's
Yeah.
another big thing about having a professional
Yeah.
do your lease for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Todd, you have
Yeah, so, if it's a single family residence, and certain pricing structure or rent, you can actually say, we're not accepting section 8.
that's, yeah.
You cannot say that.
No.
Oh.
Legally, you cannot discriminate about the source of income.
Oh, interesting.
So
The same with loans, fair housing. Yeah, so if someone's getting a
It is
benefit,
also
I have
harder,
to
we're
count it.
finding out, I don't have any rentals, but I have family members that have rentals that he has an eightplex, and Section 8 took over their payment, but then he ended up selling drugs, but since he didn't get rid of, since he went to sell, and he went to jail for a little bit of time, like a couple days like that, but since he was not arrested on the property, he still could not evict that tenant.
I do want to go back to yours.
Yeah.
Is it just one person owning one property?
Yeah, so.
Oh,
if it's
okay,
a-
sorry, that is
You
different,
can't
yes.
say no section
Yes,
8.
I apologize. Fair housing laws are way different if you own 4 units or less in the state of Washington, so.
On the same law, or are you talking about?
Or in
Any.
general, like if you end up getting 5 single-family homes, even in different cities, now fair housing laws fully apply to you. But 4 and under, you can,
So if it's a fourplex
you can be,
or 4 home, or a primary plus
Yes.
2 DADUs,
yeah,
you can say no to section 8
yeah,
housing.
you can.
Yeah, cause I was like, when I
Unless-
did my townhouse.
Again, unless you hire a property
Right.
management company and then we abide by fair housing laws regardless. But, yeah, so one person, you're wanting to manage it on your own, you have a single family home, no, you don't have to take section 8.
If you were to partner with in an LLC, can you say, since, let's say, Rob and I are partners, and Rob doesn't have any rental properties, and then Rob, it's on his lot, DADU, can we say that we're not taking section 8?
Oh, because you have multiple
Because
and
you
he
do,
doesn't.
and you have, are you? Talk to a lawyer. That's very tricky because, at the end of the day, right, technically,
Right.
this is his ultimate rental.
Yeah.
This is his ultimate investment. You're just kind of an equity
A
partner
source,
in it.
a
Right.
source of funding, yeah.
I
That's an
don't want to
interesting
give incorrect advice, so I would definitely just ask.
You're being recorded.
Yeah, right.
Don't say anything wrong, we will.
Yeah, no, that's tricky. I would definitely just ask somebody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lawyer.
I didn't think about that with the LLC part of it. Did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you had mentioned don't let losing money on your rental deter you from renting, because we're kind of in this pickle right now where we want to move out of state. We've lived in our home for 3.5 years and we don't have that low interest rate, so our mortgage is pretty high
Yeah.
and not at rental. So we'd be losing like 1,000 or more a month,
Ooh,
which is a hit.
this is where it comes to goals and don't ever put yourself in a financial hardship
Yeah,
over something
I mean, we
like
can
this.
make it work because what we think is we could rent where we want to end up, and overall we would net to what we're paying for our mortgage
Alright.
until we can sell for a better price and then use that to buy there. So it's kind of,
Yeah, I would just be careful of not putting yourself into such a hard
Yeah,
position
we're
that,
getting
that
stuck.
you are.
Well, if you're that low
Yeah.
per month, and then let's say they can't pay
Yeah.
rent
Yes.
1 month, and then you're now that low
Now you
plus
have to cover
a
that
whole
mortgage.
month.
and then my question
And then
is,
let's say, I know you have a new construction house, but let's say
Yeah.
something goes wrong, then you're out maintenance as well as,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
only kind of hard.
and then also if you are, so say you do have a renter in there for a year and it came to time to sell, so you have to uphold their lease, right? Whoever
Yes.
buys the house has to uphold that
Yes.
lease, and then once their lease is ended, they're supposedly supposed to leave is the goal.
So you would typically issue a 90-day notice if
90
you're
days, yeah.
planning on selling, and that supersedes any of these just cause things and scenarios. So if you want to sell your home, you just issue the proper notice. At the end of the lease, they need to move out. And then I typically don't recommend listing with a tenant
No.
being in place.
Don't do
Wait till they're out and then do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not fun, because the
I
amount of
would
notice
assume,
you have to
yeah.
give, and then it's like a whole, it
And then
just
if they're
doesn't help
busy and they don't want
anybody.
anyone to come into their house, they can technically refuse a showing and then.
Not unless if you can issue a 48-hour notice.
Right, but
They
they,
can't refuse, but
they,
they're
be
not gonna make it fun
difficult.
on you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or if they
Or
don't make it
they're in the
nice.
shower or something weird and it's just awkward.
Yeah.
I say real estate is always a good investment. The longer you can hold on to a property and the more equity you can build in it, I say that's a good thing, but never ever let it hurt your day-to-day life so much that you're like, you're stressed and
Yeah.
you're worried
That's where
about
I think
those
me and my
things.
husband are butting heads right now,
Yeah.
is because he wants to hold on to it because it is our only home right now, and he doesn't want to leave the real estate market.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
The
If it
payoff.
was
the
at
payoff
like
is
a 3% rate, I would 100%
Yes.
agree with
If
him,
it-
like,
yeah.
If it was a low rate,
Totally.
also you weren't lose like $1,000. That's a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, and that's
then,
what I
it's
look
going
at
to
it
take
too. I was
a-
like, I could do a lot with $1,000.
Right.
that's gonna take a few years to be able for the market
Yeah.
rent to be able to catch up to that. So
it
that
won't
you
just
are-
happen in 1 year,
Yeah,
yeah.
you got,
You gotta at least
And that's
like,
kind of
yeah.
where I'm,
It's
trying to
about.
convince-
it's
I would
about
say do
ultimate
the math
goals.
on a 5-year term.
yeah.
Do the math on a 5-year term. If you lost that and it didn't go up in 5 years, that's your worst case scenario. It's not gonna happen, it will, but you know, I always say do it in 5-year terms, incrementally, and then do the math of, okay, if we output this much and we rent it for this much, what does that look like? And then figure out, you know.
But also, like, if you are losing that every month, and then you're losing it, let's say 2 years to get back the value of what you put into your house,
Yeah,
like, what's
then
that
it's-
math look
yeah.
like?
Yeah.
And what's the equity gone up in
Yeah.
5 years? Because we just talked, you know. Is
I mean,
that-
your house is definitely, it's close, it's just,
I know,
do you wanna
we're
lose
just
it
waiting.
for 12, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. which,
I know. Well, I guess I have one more question.
yeah.
Because there's talk of obviously a recession possibly coming our way. Would that have any impact on the rental market, or would that be a positive thing in the rental market? If people can't afford homes, they'd be more in rentals.
I
or?
will say, yeah, it's a scale, right? When the buying is good, the rentals were still good,
Yeah.
but they balance out. I wouldn't say that there's a bad time,
Okay.
but it does all, like, recession would ultimately impact the rental
Housing,
rate, probably.
rental,
Yeah.
everything.
It'll go across the board.
And you'll see, if that ever happens, you'll see a lot of current rentals of people with 3% interest rates who kept their houses and rented them out. All of those will be the ones in foreclosure. That's where the foreclosures will come into play, because they're gonna let go of their rental before they're gonna let go of their
Yeah.
Right.
residents.
Okay.
But, is that gonna happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a need for, yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of to doubt that,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, any other questions for Miranda? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Taryn's just gonna quickly lead us through some HELOC. So if you do want to use, so this is our info, you guys have it in your little sheets. So if you do want to use your home value and how to pull out of it, so.
Yeah, so I feel like we kind of really just already talked about the fact that a lot of people have low interest rates, right? So HELOCs and HELoans are a way to keep that first mortgage at the low interest rate, but still be able to utilize your equity if need be. So, you know, it depends on the scenario on what you're doing with those funds. But it can be a really good financial tool to be able to build wealth as well as continue to keep your output expenses low. So HELOC and HELoans are two separate things, and a lot of times we hear the word HELOC. I feel like it's a little more publicized, if you must, and talked about a little bit more. So I'm just gonna kind of give you like a Cliff Note version of like what they are, their advantages, and then like some considerations to think about when you want to go that route, or if you want to go that route. So home equity line of credit, essentially, like in the lamest terms possible, is a credit card on your home. I mean, that's the easiest way to explain it. So it's a revolving credit line, and you borrow what you need when you need it, and then you can pay it down, just like similar to any credit card that you have. So they are going to be typically a variable rate. Normally they're going to be locked in for the first 5 years or the first 10 years, and typically their term is 20 years long. And then in the beginning, what is really like flashy about HELOCs is that they're an interest-only payment in the beginning. So what that means is typically the payment is lower because you're not paying towards the principal of what you're borrowing. You're just paying the interest, and that's it. So some advantages are they're flexible. So what that means is, like, you know, if you have a HELOC line of $100,000, you can pretty much do with it what you wish. There's no like documentation you have to provide on what you're using it for or anything like that. You can kind of come and go as you please, take from it, pay back as much as you want. So it gives you some like variables to go through. You only pay interest on what you borrow. So if you have an open HELOC and you put $10 on it and you never use it again, and you only pay on what you borrow, which is kind of nice, because if you paid it off and it's a zero balance, then you're not paying per month on that anymore. And you can reuse the funds once they're paid back. So if you do pay it back, you can reuse them. So if you are a person who's like a, you know, frequent renovator and need Holly a lot, sometimes a HELOC can be something that can help you utilize, you know, being able to use that. Now they only stay open for a certain amount of time, so you got to make sure you look at your terms on how long that's open. So a couple things to consider with HELOCs. Your payments will increase over time if you have a balance, because you are going to eventually have to pay principal and interest, not just interest. The full repayment, when you go to, like, say I don't know, win the lotto and you want to pay it off, right? You have to pay your principal and your interest on that whole lump sum if you must, right? They're a little less predictable for budgeting because, again, they go off of current market rates. So if you're now at this variable interest rate, your payment can go up. And obviously the more you spend on it also increases your payment as well. So it's not your mortgage is a fixed rate, pretty much standard, always the same, and this will vary. It will go up and down. So those are just some things to consider when you're thinking about utilizing a HELOC. So a HE loan is a home equity loan, and it is a lump sum of cash up front. It's a fixed interest rate typically, and fixed monthly payments. So those are really nice for people who are like, I don't care, I just need $60,000 to fix my roof, and that's all I need. I don't need anything more than that. And I just want to make sure I can pay it back in 20 years. Great. That's a HE loan. That's going to benefit a situation like that a little bit better. Advantages of them are they are predictable monthly payment because they're fixed. You have your principal, your interest all going into one payment. Of course, that's always going to make the payment a little bit higher if you're also paying principal and interest at the same time. They're really good for one-time large expenses or a very large debt consolidation. You have to look at a blended rate if you're consolidating debt, but sometimes if you're paying 23%, 24% in interest on a bunch of different credit card debts or consumer debt that you might have, sometimes rolling that all into one with maybe a little bit higher rate, maybe your overall is a 7.5 rate, financially your output and cash going out of your pocket every month is less, which means you are benefiting yourself even by taking that monthly payment, right? So that's really, like, you have to look at the math on stuff like that to make sure it makes sense. And so they're stable because they are a fixed rate. So they are what they are, they don't go up and down. So that's kind of the differences between them. Considerations is you are paying, your full payment starts immediately. You don't have a draw. You can't take a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. It's all at one time.
And you don't have that flexibility of being able to pull in and out of it once the funds are dispersed. You just get the funds and you're good to go. So the next thing I want to kind of talk about is like